It wasn't the first time Adam went off the grid for days. A nature photographer, freelancer for survival magazines and obscure documentaries, he had a habit of disappearing into forests, swamps, or deserts. But this time was different. The last place he texted from was a remote spot in northern Washington state, near Nia Bay, a coastal town right next to the Maca Indian Reservation. He mentioned an island, one that wasn't on any map. "There's something here, Luke. Gonna stay the night? Explore tomorrow?" That was the last message. After that, silence. 6 days passed. I called his satellite phone. Voicemail. I called the agency he sometimes worked with. They said he was on leave. I contacted the local police. They opened a report, but did nothing. To them, he was just another adventurer out of range. I'm Luke, Adam's older brother. I've always been the responsible one, the grounded one. He was the restless one, impulsive, the type who had to see things for himself. And now he was missing on a forgotten part of the country, surrounded by ocean and forest, where civilization felt stuck in the 60s. I got in my car and drove there, almost 17 hours to Nia Bay. The whole time, the same image haunted me. The kind of thing he might have found. It wasn't just wildlife. He'd already photographed bears and had even been stalked by a cougar. This was something else. He sounded anxious. The tone of the message was off, like he'd found something he shouldn't have. I arrived in town late in the afternoon. Nia Bay looked abandoned. Boarded up windows, wet streets, the air thick with the stench of salt water and something worse, rotten fish. The gas station was empty. Only the marina office was open. I asked about Adam. No one knew anything. Until an old woman wearing a red shawl called me aside and whispered, "Your brother went to Sable Island. He shouldn't have." I'd never heard of it. Sable Island? Where is that? She pointed to the gray sea behind the harbor. Beyond the fog, but it only shows itself to those it chooses. I tried to press her, but she walked away, her cane sinking into the mud. Back in my car, frustrated, I found a clue. A bar at the end of the street had a wall covered in notes, crumpled papers, business cards, flyers for excursions. In the bottom corner, buried under old duct tape, I found a dirty card. Fletcher's Ferry, private transport to unmapped islands. The number still worked. A raspy voice answered. "Fletcher speaking. I need to get to Sable Island. My brother went there." Silence. Then, "Tomorrow, 6 a.m. Bring what you got. No promises on the way back." The call ended. The dock was covered in thick fog, dense like curdled milk. Even with my phone flashlight pointed down, I could barely see my feet. Each step sounded muffled by the damp. The ocean lapped lazily at the posts, but the rhythm was off, almost like breathing. At 6 a.m., there was no one else around, just the sound of an old engine humming in the mist. The boat appeared out of nowhere. Small dark wood, reeking of diesel, rope, and dead fish. The hull was covered in scratches, like it had been gnawed on by something. At the helm, a short man with a tangled beard and hollow eyes. "Luke?" "Yeah, Fletcher. Get in. And kill that light. It attracts things you don't want seeing you." I didn't ask questions. I sat in silence while he maneuvered the boat out of the marina. Behind us, the town disappeared into the fog. Ahead, the sea looked like a road to nowhere. The ride took almost 2 hours. No land in sight. No sound but the motor and the ocean. Until Fletcher pointed with his chin. There! A dark silhouette emerged through the mist. An island. Small, rocky, covered in tall, twisted trees. And there was something else. A heavy scent in the air, like burnt leather mixed with old blood. There was no pier, just a strip of stones where the boat barely docked. From here, it's on foot, Fletcher said. You'll find an old lighthouse and a cabin. If you hear anything in the woods, don't answer. What's on this island? Only what you bring with you, and what's waiting for you. He didn't smile, just turned the boat around and left without looking back. I was alone. The silence was absolute. No wind, no birds. The trees didn't sway. I followed a narrow trail, pushing past damp branches. Each step sank into rotting leaves. There were tracks on the ground, human, and something else. Deeper, with claws. The lighthouse appeared through the trees, abandoned, covered in moss. Next to it, a rotting wooden cabin. The door was ajar. Inside there were recent signs of human presence. A dirty pan, clothes hanging, and a digital camera. Adams. I turned on the screen. The last photo showed the forest at night. Trees, shadows, glowing eyes. One image showed a silhouette in the background. Huge, upright, clawed. What the hell did he see? The day darkened early. The sun vanished behind thick clouds. The lighthouse didn't work. I spent the night in the cabin, lying down with a pocket knife in my hand. Outside, something circled. Pause, and then breathing. Low, raspy, then scratching on the wooden wall. Like something testing the structure, sniffing. I didn't sleep. In the middle of the night, I heard a scream, long, human, coming from deep in the island. It was my brother's voice. The scream echoed across the island like a wet thunderclap. It had a human quality, but something twisted it. Like the lungs behind it weren't entirely human. I ran. With the flashlight shaking in my hand, I tore through the damp trail, branches scraping my face, leaving tiny cuts. The air grew heavier with each step. The fog wasn't drifting in from the sea. It was rising from the forest itself. And the stench. Something rotten, something both alive and dead. In the brush, I found something hanging from a tree. A torn backpack stained with dried blood. Adams. Inside, a soaked notebook with barely legible words. Not legends. Eyes in the dark. I'm not alone. Not human. The scream again. Closer now. Then silence. I reached a clearing, the remnants of a campsite. A tent slashed in half, pieces of clothing scattered. A trail of blood led over a small ridge. I slid down the slope, slipping in the mud, heart pounding in my throat. At the bottom I found bones, dozens of them, some with bite marks, others crushed. There were human skulls, large and small, all dirty, tossed around like forgotten toys. In the center, a rough altar made of stone, carved with strange symbols. They looked tribal, or older, like claw marks etched in rock. I was shaking. Then, a snap behind me. I turned the flashlight. Nothing. Another sound to my left. Heavy, like a trunk being stepped on. I flashed the light again. Nothing. And then, I saw it. Between the trees, for just a second, two eyes reflected the light. Tall, far too high to belong to any normal animal. And they were staring at me. I ran. Didn't think. Just bolted through the forest, stumbling, falling, tearing my clothes on thorns. It followed. I heard the steps, heavy, rhythmic, not human. Something more primal, faster, hungrier. I reached the cabin, lungs burning, slammed the door shut, piled furniture against it, grabbed an old rusty rifle from the wall. Only one bullet. Night fell like a soaked cloth. Outside, footsteps. Then the door was scratched by 3 long claws, slowly, like a warning. And the smell. Wet meat, burnt hide, blood. I held the rifle, trembling. But nothing came in. By morning, the marks were still there. and a new sound came from deep in the forest. Voices. Human. Or close to it. Someone. Or something. Was calling my name. The voices were calling my name. First low, whispered, then clearer. Luke. Luke. Like a mother summoning her child back home. But my mother had been dead for 10 years. I left the cabin, rifle in hand, not knowing if it would still fire. The day was strange, soaked in a reddish haze. The sky seemed lower, the trees more twisted. I followed the sound. The trail led me to a rock formation. 3 stones in a line, covered in carvings that looked like teeth driven into the surface. Beyond them was a clearing, and at its center, a house. Large, strangely intact. Dark wood, clean windows, white curtains. As if someone took care of it daily. A garden of wildflowers neatly arranged, in stark contrast to the rotting forest around it. The door was open. I smelled burning incense and meat, roasted flesh. My stomach turned. I entered. Everything seemed normal, like a home. Clean rugs, antique furniture, black and white photos on the walls. But something was wrong. The photos looked too old. And in all of them, the same woman. Long white hair, wrinkle-free face, gray eyes, always in the center. Sometimes smiling, other times still as a shadow. Always surrounded by different people, men, women, all with the same blank expression. "You arrived early," a voice said behind me. I turned. It was her. She stood on the stairs, wearing a long beige dress that looked handmade. No dust on her, no sweat. Like time slipped off her skin, her eyes were deep, motionless. "I'm Eleanor. You're looking for your brother." "You saw him?" My voice was weaker than I wanted. "He came, like many before him, but he wasn't ready." I stepped forward, rifle trembling in my hands. "What is this place? What the hell's going on here?" "A legacy. An old burden. Something civilization forgot, but the land remembers. Some islands keep secrets. This one keeps a hunger." She walked closer, slowly. With every step, the floor felt more unstable, like the house stood above something, breathing. "You need to understand, Luke," she said. "Your brother became part of the cycle. Now you must decide. Run or become part of it." Before I could react, I heard footsteps upstairs, heavy. Paws, not feet. She smiled. "My sons woke up early today." Suddenly, the wall beside me exploded. A creature burst through the wood, lunging at me, hairy, black, with iron jaws. I fired the rifle by instinct. The sound was deafening. The creature staggered, howling, thick blood pouring from its shoulder. I ran, bolted through the door and into the woods. The sound of paws chased me. 2 of them now, maybe 3. The entire island was alive and hungry. The forest seemed to swallow me with every step. The creature's blood still stained my arm, and the stench, metallic, hot, animalistic, clung to my skin like a curse. I didn't know if I'd killed it, but I didn't stop to find out. I ran until my legs stopped feeling real. That's when I heard a low whistle from inside a moss-covered rock formation. 3 short notes, then silence. I aimed the flashlight into the dark hole between the stones. "In here, quick," a man's voice whispered. I hesitated, then heard the snap of a branch behind me. I dove into the cave. It was tight, damp, smelling of mold and old smoke. A man with a scruffy beard, bloodshot eyes, and a knife in his hand stared at me from the back of the tunnel. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "None of us should." "Who are you?" "Dean, Environmental Research Services." I came to investigate reports of pollution on an island that isn't supposed to exist. That was 5 weeks ago. You saw my brother? Adam. He nodded slowly. I saw him. He stayed in the house. Went out to explore and never came back. What are those things? Dean looked around like the rocks themselves might hear. They're not wolves. They're something older, unnatural. The stories talk about an ancient native cult that tried to control the spirit of hunger, a formless entity that took over men, turned them into predators. But when settlers arrived, the rituals were broken. The entity got loose. The woman in the house, Eleanor, she's the anchor, the key to all of it. Why doesn't she age? Dean's gaze darkened. Because she feeds it, and in return, she doesn't die. We stayed there for hours. Now and then, we heard distant howls, claws scraping against rock. The island was a sanctuary, a breeding ground. They let visitors arrive, chose who would live long enough to suffer. Dean had a map, a torn piece of parchment, burned around the edges, marked with symbols, caves, altars, ossuaries. There was also a boat docked on the far side of the island, our only chance to escape. If we're gonna make it out, we have to kill Eleanor. Without her, the cycle breaks. And the monsters? Without the matriarch, they'll lose control. They might kill each other, or us. But it's the only way. The plan was simple. Sneak into the house again, set traps, and strike at dawn. That night I didn't sleep. I heard them walking in the forest, scraping claws on trees, whispering my name. And once, just once, I heard my brother. He said, "Luke, help me." But I knew. That wasn't him. The sky at dawn looked sick, a deep red hue, like exposed raw meat. The forest was too quiet. Dean and I moved like shadows through the trees, carrying what little we had, knives, a bottle of fuel, and an old revolver with 3 bullets. The house appeared through the mist like a tumor among the trees. We laid traps, sharpened stakes hidden beneath dry leaves, bottles rigged with shards of glass strung with fishing line, and fuel soaked into the porch. Dean had a plan. Lure one of the creatures out, isolate it, kill it. It was suicidal. But waiting was worse. We hid on opposite sides of the path. Dean whistled. The sound sliced the silence like a scalpel. Seconds later, one of Eleanor's sons appeared. It walked upright, but its arms were far too long, dragging claws on the ground. The face was partially human. Like it had been stretched from within, the eyes pushed outward, the jaw oversized, and the stench like fermented rat meat in the sun. It sniffed the air, took a step, right where Dean wanted. The stakes pierced its foot with a wet crunch. It howled. Not in pain, in rage. Violent, vibrating, ancient. Dean leapt from the shadows with a knife and stabbed it in the flank. The reaction was instant. The thing grabbed Dean with impossible strength. I screamed, rushed out with the revolver and fired once. The shot grazed it, but enough to make it drop him. Blood gushed from Dean's chest. "Run!" he yelled, coughing. I didn't. The creature lunged, nearly 2 meters in the air. I rolled aside. It landed on the broken stakes, shrieking. I grabbed the fuel bottle, shattered on the ground, and doused its head. Struck the lighter. Fire. The creature thrashed, howled, writhing in flames, clawing at everything. The smell of burning fur filled my lungs like acid. It was the worst sound I'd ever heard. Not just pain. Something inside it screamed with it. Something deeper, older. It collapsed, burning, and didn't move again. Dean was bleeding. Badly. "It's over?" he asked. I looked at the house. It started. That's when we saw Eleanor, standing on the porch. She watched the burning body. Her eyes shimmered like wet glass. She wasn't sad or surprised. She smiled. "My son," she whispered. Ned was the weakest. Now only the faithful remain. The forest shook, howls. 2, 3, 4. "We have to go," Dean said. "We can't take another hit." I helped him up, his arm slung over my shoulder, and we fled down the west trail. But we knew. They were coming. Hungrier than ever. The forest came alive. Not with wind or birds, with howls. They weren't just calls, they were commands. They were moving, flanking, speaking, hunting. Dean and I slipped along a side path, heading toward what he called the blind zone, where the vegetation was thick enough to mask scent and sight. The ground there was strange, dark, damp, with the consistency of rotting meat. Each step sank into moss that seemed to breathe. "Down there's where they sleep," Dean whispered. "If we're gonna hit back, it's now, before sunset. At night, we're just meat." We reached a rock formation with an oval opening. It stank of old blood and wet earth. Skins were hung on the walls, not animal, human. We went in, careful. The cave spiraled downward. At the bottom, torches flickered in bone holders, symbols carved into the walls. Not in English, not in any known language. Claw-like patterns that pulsed with firelight. Then we heard them. Voices, whispers, weeping, twisted childlike laughter. All from below. We crept forward. A natural chamber opened before us. They were there. 6 bodies, naked, contorted, kneeling around a fire pit made of human remains. Some mid-transformation, hairy arms, arched backs, mouths stretched into broken jaws. Others fully monstrous, breathing heavily, drooling, and all praying. Not in words, in guttural sounds. Dean readied his Molotovs. Handed me one. "We torch this place now, or we don't leave at all. What if the cave collapses? Better buried than devoured, brother." We threw them. The fire roared through the chamber like it had been waiting. The creatures screamed, thrashed, tried to flee, but the space was too tight. The ceiling trembled. Stone fell. Heat melted flesh and sewn skins. We escaped before it caved in. The entrance collapsed behind us with a dull roar, but the screams echoed long after. Dean fell to his knees, shaking. "We got 'em," he kept saying. "We did it." But deep down, I knew. They were just part of it. The root was still alive. And it knew we were coming. The trail back to the house felt different. The ground shook beneath our feet. The air was thicker, almost solid, like we were pushing through living tissue. The sky had darkened, but it wasn't night. It was like the sun had abandoned the island. Dean was weak, bleeding from his side but gripping his knife tight. I carried the revolver. 2 bullets left, and the axe. We found it in one of the abandoned sheds, embedded in a stump stained black. The blade was rusted, but heavy. You could feel it had already taken life. We reached the house. The curtains fluttered as if someone breathed behind them. The door stood open, just like before. We entered. Everything was clean again, like no chaos had touched it. The burned son's body was gone, no scorch marks. The photos were back on the wall. Eleanor was waiting at the table, alone, white dress, hands folded. "You've stained this place," she said, calm. "So close to redemption. So close to eternity." "Where's my brother?" I asked. She smiled. "He is part of everything now, part of the cycle. As you will be." Dean fired. The bullet struck her shoulder. Eleanor fell back, but didn't scream. No blood like there should have been. She crawled, laughing. Weak, so fragile, so mortal. From inside the house came the roar, the last surviving creature, the largest of her sons. The wall behind Eleanor shattered. It emerged like a living avalanche. Scarred body, red eyes, twisted jaw like it had broken and healed wrong. A man's head hung from its belt. Adam's. I didn't think, I charged. Dean yelled for me to wait, but time was gone. The beast came for me. I swung the axe, missed. Its claw tore a chunk from the wall. I struck its leg. It roared, grabbed me, threw me. I hit the floor hard. Dean leapt on it with his knife, drove it into its neck. The beast screamed, seized Dean by the torso and ripped. The sound. It was the worst part. Like cloth tearing, but with bones snapping inside. Blood sprayed like a fountain. Dean was dead. I screamed, not with bravery, just terror. I struck again with the axe, to the skull, not a glancing blow, dead center. The blade sank deep. The beast staggered, growled, dropped to its knees. I pulled the axe free and struck again, and again, until it was nothing but broken meat and shattered bone. Eleanor stood in the corner, dress soaked in blood, face motionless. "You can't kill what was never born," she said. But I knew. On my back, I had the last bottle of fuel, and the lighter. I soaked the house, curtains, floors, furniture, then lit it. The flames rose fast. Eleanor burned standing, no screams. Eyes locked on me, even as her face melted. Skin bubbled, but she didn't fall. Until the house collapsed on her. The island trembled. The final howl didn't come from any monster. It came from the ground. And then, silence. The house burned for hours. I stayed outside, watching the flames devour the sky. Eleanor never screamed. When the roof caved in and fire swallowed everything, I felt something snap inside the island, like an invisible knot came undone. But the silence didn't last. In the middle of the night, the forest erupted, not with howls, with screams, human, pain, panic, terror, mixed with the sound of claws, bones snapping, flesh being torn. The island was collapsing. Or maybe Eleanor's sons, without her control, had gone mad. Killing each other? Or anything still breathing? Dean was dead. Adam, too. But there was one piece left. The boat woman. I remembered her, the one who brought me here, thin, silent, hollow-eyed. Not just a guide. Eleanor had called her faithful. She was an accomplice, maybe more. I had to find her. The trail back to the coast was choked with smoke and fallen trees. The island shook in waves, like it was being swallowed by its own nightmare. Blood soaked the vegetation. Too much to be just animal. I reached the dock at sunrise. The boat was still there. So was she, standing on the deck, arms crossed, like she'd been waiting. "It's over," I said. She just looked at me. "It never ends. It only begins again." She's dead. The house is gone. The place is older than her, older than any name. I drew the revolver. One bullet left. She didn't flinch. "You going to kill me?" "You helped her. You knew." I survived. Like all the faithful. I pulled the trigger. The shot cracked. The hole between her eyes was too small to stop anything real, but she dropped to her knees, then onto her side like a fallen log. I climbed aboard, started the engine. The sea felt thicker, like it was boiling beneath the surface. But the fog was gone. The island faded behind me, ash on the wind. I didn't look back. The coast came into view hours later, a gray smear beneath a colorless sky. Docking was easy. No one was waiting. Nia Bay's marina stood empty. The planks groaned beneath my wet boots. Behind me, the boat floated, empty, except for the dried blood on the deck and the stink of salt, oil, and death. I walked through the town like a ghost. People glanced at me but didn't come close, as if they knew. I returned to the motel where Adam had stayed before leaving. The door was taped shut with police seals. I broke it down with my shoulder. On the floor, I found the last photo negatives he left behind. Trees on the island, the lighthouse, and then Adam himself. A mirror selfie in the bathroom, his face blank. But in the window reflection behind him, something massive, standing, clawed, a dog's face, deformed, or a man's broken by too much pain in the bones. I spent the night there, no lights, no sound, wondering what to say to Mom, to the cops, to friends, but I said nothing. I ditched the boat, destroyed the photos, and disappeared. For a while I tried to live again, but there were marks on my body, on my mind. The first month I lost sleep, heard things in the dark, scraping on the walls, a low growl when I turned out the light. I'd wake with the smell of damp earth in my room. Then the nightmares came. Eleanor's eyes melted, whispering my name. Dean staring at me with his chest open. And Adam standing in the forest, eyes white, repeating something I never understood. You brought her with you. I tried to forget, moved cities, cut my hair. Hid in the crowd. But last night, I saw someone watching me, on the street, between cars, tall, too thin, hands in his pockets, face hidden in shadow. I stopped, stared straight at him, and he smiled. Not human. I'd know that smile anywhere. The island didn't stay behind. It came with me. And now, it's waiting. Waiting for me to close my eyes again.